Amis mélomanes, bienvenue sur Méloman Mig, bienvenue sur ma chaîne, enfin pas sur moi, hein, sur ma chaîne en l'occurrence. Donc ici, comme vous l'avez compris, hein, c'est une nouvelle vidéo spéciale interview, donc j'ai eu la chance de m'entretenir pendant plus de 2 heures avec le groupe Wheels Dissolve, donc c'est un groupe qui nous fait du death metal progressif à caractère mélodique avec des éléments de black metal, de death metal, un petit peu d'éléments doom et d'éléments post-metal, donc rien que ça, mais ils le font, je vous dis, d'une manière très très subtile, le tout s'emboîte parfaitement bien, chaque élément a vraiment sa place, c'est comme je le disais dans l'interview, c'est vraiment comme des pièces de puzzle qui s'emboîtent parfaitement les unes avec les autres et nous donnent franchement un contenu super lisse et super savoureux pour les tympans. Donc ils nous proviennent de Houston au Texas, ils sont 4, hein, vous les verrez dans l'interview. Et voilà, l'interview à la base a duré donc plus d'1 h 30. Et donc ici j'ai essayé franchement de faire énormément de cuts pour que la vidéo soit la plus courte possible. Mais voilà, donc il y avait aussi un souci de vous laisser quand même la majeure partie du contenu intéressant. Et Dieu sait qu'il y avait énormément de parties de la discussion qui étaient super intéressantes. Donc j'ai décidé de compiler tout ça. Et au final ça donne quand même une interview de plus de 50 minutes. Désolé pour la longueur. Et désolé aussi, donc du coup vu la longueur, hein, je vous avais promis des sous-titres. Mais là c'est vraiment trop de travail. Donc pour les non-anglophones d'entre vous, ben, excusez-moi. Mais voilà, je ne pourrai donc pas malheureusement procéder au sous-titrage car voilà, la vidéo est vraiment trop longue, c'est vraiment trop de travail, surtout que j'ai 2-3 vidéos sur lesquelles je suis en train de bosser actuellement et qui me prennent pas mal de temps également. J'y reviendrai en fin de vidéo à ce sujet. Donc je vous laisse avec l'interview et je vous montre quand même un petit passage de leur nouvel album Echoes, donc qui est sorti en août 2020. C'est un concept album de 32 minutes avec un seul morceau, et oui, un seul morceau de 32 minutes où il se passe plein de choses. Un concept album donc qui raconte une histoire, l'histoire d'un homme qui navigue dans son vaisseau dans l'espace à la recherche d'une planète afin de la coloniser, pardon, et il va lui arriver maintes et maintes péripéties. C'est ça, péripéties. Péripéties. Enfin, il va lui arriver plein de trucs, quoi, voilà. Donc, avant cet album donc, de 2020, ils ont sorti un album en 2018 qui est juste aussi excellent, hein, avec des morceaux relativement longs, avec un album qui dépasse la durée de 50 minutes. Franchement, je vous conseille également de découvrir cet album. Donc voilà, donc comment ça va se passer? Donc je vais vous montrer l'intégralité. Je vais vous montrer l'intégralité, mais c'est ça en fait, parce que entre une interview avec un anglais, là une interview avec des texans, au final j'en perdrai mon latin, quoi. Enfin j'en perdrai mon français et surtout mon accent belge, hein. Enfin voilà, donc cette interview sera jalonnée de plusieurs extraits en fait de ce morceau, de cet album Echoes, qui est un morceau également, hein, comme je vous l'ai dit, de manière à ce que vous voyez de quoi on parle en fait. Mais bon voilà, j'ai déjà pris pas mal de temps en guise d'introduction, donc on va tout de suite rentrer dans le vif du sujet. C'est parti, on se retrouve après. So guys, I am here with the one band, the famous band who just released Echoes last August 2020, Wheels Dissolve. How are you guys?
Pretty good.
Thanks for having us, Miguel.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for joining me. Really, I really appreciate it. I couldn't imagine that contacting you would be so successful and that would actually be happening. But wow, here we go.
We're always happy to hop on calls and answer questions.
We're very approachable. So
yeah, it's thanks to people like you that more people hear our music. So I don't really like it when bands are like, oh, I won't talk to them. Like that's bullshit. No, you help us very much by spreading our music. So we're very grateful for you having us on this.
You're very welcome. Because actually the aim of my YouTube channel is really to work on finding the best underground metal scene bands And I remember it's thanks to YouTube actually that I discovered your first LP. It was back in June, if I remember right. And I say, what the fuck is that music? It's fucking good. And then I searched on the web, and then I realized that you were going to soon release Echoes. And then when I discovered it last summer, wow, mega blast. That just blew me away. And wow, it's really amazing because, well, that will be part of my few questions that are coming up tonight. So I guess, who is the drummer? Again, it's Andrew?
No, I'm the drummer.
Ah, it's Branson. Okay, sorry.
Branson, yeah, I'm the drummer.
So Branson, the drummer. Of course, Nick, you are on the vocals along with two of you as well. I guess there are three voices, right?
Yeah. The rest of the group. Everyone but Branson. Yeah. We're going to give a Branson a Britney Spears headset for the next album.
Yeah, he can find it.
And who is doing the clean vocals?
That's Andrew.
Okay. And then the harsh vocals, of course, Nick.
That's mostly me, yeah.
Yeah.
Sean did a lot of the robots on this album, and he did some harsh vocals on the first album.
Okay.
Yeah. The easiest way to break it up, and it's not true 100% of the time, is the cleans are mostly me. All the low screams are Nick, and like the high kind of black metal screams are me. And Sean was the principal voice for the computer on Echoes, but it would actually take a sec to explain what I did to get that effect, but it's actually 4 people singing at different pitches.
Yeah.
Just kind of blended there with the vocoder effect to get the weird kind of robotic harmony thing we did.
It's actually the 3 of us vocalists, and then Sean's wife was the 4th vocalist that all combined to be the robot for this album.
Okay. Cool.
We're nerds. Sorry.
Yeah.
My first question would be: could you please tell us how guys met, and do you know each other like for forever since you were kids, or how did you meet up, and what made you decide to do what you do as a band?
Somewhat. There's lots of good stories in here. So Andrew and I met back freshman year of college, kind of late. So that was back in 2005. We were both in the same program at school, doing kind of audio and acoustics. And Andrew, we lived close to each other and used to see each other walking around with band T-shirts on and metal T-shirts. And eventually we sat close to each other in a physics exam. And then we actually started talking and then playing guitar together. We had a band that was kind of more melodeath, I guess, back in college. And then when I moved to Houston after college, Andrew joined not too long after that. And Sean and I met on a kind of amplifier forum on the internet. And so that made 3 of us back in 2015 that started the band. And then Branson came along maybe a month later. We were looking for a drummer, and Andrew and I didn't feel like going with a friend to get barbecue that day, but we went anyways. And we were standing in line, and Branson noticed the Vatnet Viscar T-shirt that I was wearing. I was like, hey, I like that band. And we started talking, and maybe 15 minutes into the conversation, and he's like, oh, yeah, I play lots of black metal on drums. And it's like, oh, do you want to join a band? And yeah, from then on, it was just going.
My next question would be: what are the main themes that are exploited in your lyrics? Could you please tell us more? I read that for writing Echoes, it's basically the story of a guy who navigates into space and looking for another planet, maybe to colonize. So I don't know if I'm correct, more or less. That's what I think I understood about.
No,
that's pretty accurate. I mean, we can get more granular, but yeah, that's not a bad take on it. To say it fast.
Yeah, Echoes is Andrew's story. I think most of the story for the first album was my idea, and we like to kind of someone in the band will come up with an idea, like we're working on the stories for 2 different albums right now, and Sean and Branson are writing a lot for those stories. But what we like to do is actually have a firm storyline. I think Andrew coined this term in some other interview, and it was on point, that we're very cinematic with how we write the music. We like to think of everything as the story first and come up with a good story that we want to tell. And then they're all concept albums, so then we can write the music around the story. So we always start everything. We've had a couple of riffs that we think will sound good, or drum parts come in our heads, stuff like that. But we always lock down the story before we really do the heavy writing, and certainly before any vocals come out, because we have to have a story to write the vocals to them.
Yeah, and we've actually sidelined riffs a few times that were really good, but didn't fit in the story. So it's like, all right, I guess this is for a later date. Like the very first riff we ever wrote was one of Nick's, and it didn't fit till the album that we're writing right now.
Yeah.
So that everything serves the story, kind of.
So because you are already writing a new album.
Yes.
Already.
We had half of it written after the first album, and then when January 2 years ago, we thought, okay, it might be a fun year to do an EP that would be about 18 minutes long, and that's how Echoes came to be. And then once we sailed past 25 minutes worth of music, we're like, oh, this is going to be an entire album, and it was going to be our first release for Hypnotic Dirge. So I was like, all right, do we really want the first thing to be an EP? Like, let's just go ahead and do this. Mm-hmm. So we had a general, very loose skeleton of a story for what would have been the second album. Now will be the third album. And so then when we were done with Echoes, it's like, all right, let's just go right back to what we were doing. So what's funny is anybody who liked the first album more, this is going to be like a blend of the first and the second album, because some of the riffs are actually like 3 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and the part of the reason why I think we're moving so quickly in this direction is because of the pandemic. Normally, I feel like a natural cycle is to release an album to try and hype it up by playing some shows or doing some publicity work, but that's kind of been yanked out from underneath us. So because of the pandemic, so the natural progression is to say, okay, well, then we just need to move on to what's next.
Wow.
Yeah.
And will it be so? Each time you release an album is like a concept album, so it tells a story, as you said. So the next one is going to be the same kind of thing. It's going to be a full story from beginning to end. Yeah, cool.
Yep. Yeah, cool. And this one will be, I'll give you a little hint. It'll be a underwater themed album.
Wow.
But still, lots of the same thing. I guess this whole question started with what themes do we write around, and so I think it kind of depends on what fits the story that we come up with. But most of our stories tend to be, at least so far in what we've been writing for the future, they tend to be very kind of dark tales that are maybe cautionary about people relying too much on technology or on religion and themes like that. But we also like bringing a little bit of history into everything. So far, the first 2 albums both had ties to Texas, and the next album and the album after that already have storyline clues that kind of tie into Houston or other areas of Texas. So we try and add a little bit of locality to the stories as well. But most of it's fairly, I guess, contemplations on kind of nihilistic worldviews, but more than that.
I think you nailed actually having you just said that out loud. I think that's what we do. We write cautionary tales.
Yeah.
Knowing what the story is for what's going to be the third album, and even like he had mentioned, we have a storyline for what will eventually be a fourth album. They're all cautionary tales, every one of them.
Cool. Can't wait. You already have like a date in mind? I mean, would it be like 2021, 2022? No, there's no.
2022 would be the earliest. I would say that we're, if I'm being generous, we're halfway to 2/3 of the way through with the music. Okay. And the storyline is 80% there, but there's still lyrics to write. There's still tying everything together. We have a lot of the, transitions are really important for the type of music that we're doing, since we like doing very soft ambient parts and then very like crushingly heavy parts. Trying to figure out the transitions between those parts it's one of the more difficult parts of this type of music for the writing. And so that sometimes ends up being very natural and sometimes ends up being the last thing that gets done. So I anticipate that we'll finish writing the album in 2021. But then late 2022 is probably most realistic for the release.
Okay. But that's what really amazed me when I listened first to your albums, because you have so many bands that try to incorporate a lot of different elements in their music.
Mm-hmm.
Some post-rock elements, some death metal elements, some mellow death metal, black metal. But some bands that are really like messy in the way they do it, but it's really not your case. Everything connects perfectly together, and it's just amazing. And I say, wow, it's the first band I heard that everything just like a puzzle, different pieces that stick together perfectly. It's just amazing. How do you come up to be able to mix so many genres of heavy metal together and be so smooth in the way you listen to it?
I think it really goes back to how I was talking about the storyline writing. We're writing everything to a story that's already in place. So we have a story locked in for the concept, and then we're writing the music to fit the story elements. And so because of that, you have your traditional changes in a storyline. You might have somber parts, you might have scary parts in the story, and musically how those ideas transition. If you're just trying to force them together, maybe it doesn't work. But since we're writing to a script already, essentially, I think that helps ease the transitions a bit. And I think I saw what Branson was about to say, something probably about our influences. So I'll let Branson talk about that.
This is, I guess, my typical spiel whenever I talk about this, and how we work together, is that you have to think of I don't know that a lot of bands the members are carbon copies of each other when it comes to influences. We're certainly not. And in fact, we're kind of the other extreme. If musical influences are on a spectrum and one person is on one end of the spectrum and other person's on the other end of the spectrum, Nick and I would make up the bookends, and Sean and Andrew are kind of what pull us together. My influences, like all of our influences, are different. And I think that makes a big difference in terms of how we write. I know that Nick and Andrew, and probably even Sean as well, would say that Opeth was a very defining influence on them. To be honest, Opeth wasn't an influence at all for me. I respect them. I like listening to them, but my influences are mainly what would come from like the old Florida death metal, like Morbid Angel or Deicide or Incantation from New York, or that, and along also with black metal, Marduk, Emperor, Behemoth, old Cradle of Filth and Dimmu Borgir, and all the way into what we call DSBM, death suicidal black metal, where you're dealing with a lot of very, very dark style of music. And for me, I'm a combination of those things. But, for some of the other guys, prog metal is a very big deal. I don't listen to prog metal, but these guys, you can tell, are very heavily influenced by it. Yeah. Post metal is a very big deal. I don't listen to a lot of post metal.
Well, you have been lately.
I have been doing better lately, but prog metal is still kind of not my thing.
Well, it's also like with post metal and then the overlap with Funeral Doom, there's a major overlap with Branson liking DSBM, because they're very, very similar genres, Funeral Doom and DSBM. The one difference is that one actually has good screams in it, and the other one sounds like someone, screaming into a microphone in his bathtub, covered in, whatever he's covered in.
Just the treble to bass ratio.
Yes, the treble to bass ratio. Branson did touch on one band that I think we all agree on, though, Emperor. We all love Emperor.
Yeah, Ishan is amazing. He
major influence. But for me, for the influence side, it's more Isan's solo albums than Emperor. Whereas for Branson, it's more Emperor than the solo albums.
And see, and it kind of goes back to that thing where I totally respect Isan's solo work, but I don't like listening to it. Whereas the old stuff like Anthems is definitely my go-to, along with In the Nightshade Eclipse, like that I could listen to all day.
Anthems is definitely my favorite Emperor album.
So it's definitely how we basically try to bring those influences together for the music we write. So they might present me with, for example, a prog part or a post-metal part, and I'll be thinking still in terms of black metal and death metal when I decide what to play over it.
Cool. So I guess you were listening to heavy metal very young, of course, like when you were teenagers, all of you, obviously. What were at that time your favorite heavy metal bands growing up? Who brought you into heavy metal, and what were you listening to when you were teenagers?
I think for me, it started off with Rammstein. I was living in Europe at the time, and so you had the late night. I think VH1 had a late night show, but also Viva Zwei had their like late night metal show that started at 11 p.m. or midnight or whatever. And so you had a lot of the British heavy metal bands on there, like your Iron Maiden and such, which was never really an influence for me or a band that I like really latched onto. But I think the industrial kind of sounding stuff is what grabbed me in at first, and Rammstein is a big one. And I'm somewhat ashamed to admit that I liked a lot of new metal back then when I was young, but we live and learn.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, like, I always heard it described that new metal was a genre of music for people who didn't fit in, knew they were never going to fit in, and were pissed off about it. And that pretty much describes high school for me. So, yeah, I was really into new metal. But to answer your initial question, the band that, I grew up in Waco, Texas, and being so close to Dallas, the Dallas-Fort Worth area there, Pantera was honestly the Pantera and Metallica were the band, and Megadeth were the bands that actually I started off with in metal as, say, around 12, 13 years old.
Okay, so all thrash metal.
Yeah. Yeah, as much as you want to call Pantera's different. Yeah.
Pantera was like their own thing for a minute. Like nobody, like when Cowboys from Hell hit the scene, like nobody else was doing what they were doing. Maybe one or two other bands. Like I could be wrong historically, but they're the one that left the mark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, groove metal wasn't a thing back then.
I know for me, I'm probably the only one that can say this, but I was raised on metal. My parents were super big into thrash in the 80s and all that. So when I was born, I basically listened to a lot of Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, Black Sabbath, Ozzy, and all that. So like I kind of was raised on all that, and it just became a norm for me. When I was a teenager, actually, I was getting into like more of the heavy stuff with Cannibal Corpse, 6 Feet Under, like especially mid-teens. It was Behemoth, Emperor, and all those bands that we've already talked about. So I kind of got started a little bit early compared to the rest of the guys.
Okay. I would say for me, the transition to death metal was about 16 or 17, and the gateway drug for me into death metal was Morbid Angel. It was easy to make the leap from Slayer to Morbid Angel because it feels like it's like extreme metal. It's like very few people dive right in. It's you start maybe with Metallica, and then you're listening to Pantera, and then you pick up Slayer, and then Slayer's the last band you can really cross before getting into death metal. And then Morbid Angel or Cannibal Corpse are typically your gateways into death metal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember hearing Cannibal Corpse in high school and not liking it at the time, thinking like this is too much for me. I was basically listening to a bunch of shred guys, the Steve Vais, Yngwie Malmsteens, Joe Satriani. I was doing that thing for a minute, and so the thrash guys were playing fast and the Metallica stuff was cool. But I'd say the first band that is in like the more legit kind of extreme metal category for me was In Flames. I had a buddy introduce me to Clayman, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. And you know, the races from there. I think after In Flames, it was Children of Bodom. And I mean, after that point, you know, the floodgates just got open.
Dark Tranquility as well.
Oh yeah.
Could ever fit Dark Tranquility. Yeah.
For me, when I was 12, I was listening to Slipknot, and it was basically the heaviest thing I could find at the time. So I was just like, yeah, cool. I'm searching for something heavier, though. And then over the summer when I was 13, we went to a record store, and my cousins got 6 Cannibal Corpse and put that on the CD player, and I was just like, yes, and immediately stopped listening to all new metal. I was like, yes, this is where I'm trying to go. This is what I've been looking for. Just immediately stopped listening to all that. So it was even before like everyone was like, oh, it's not cool to listen to anymore. It's like I was just basically listening because it was the heaviest thing I could find at the moment. And as soon as I could find anything else, immediately dropped it.
Yeah. As a sidebar, my gateway to black metal was Cruelty and the Beast by Cradle of Filth, which is still their best album as far as I'm concerned.
Really? Cruelty? Oh, yeah. Okay.
It was Emperor was the first black metal I listened to where I went, yeah, I like this. And then I think immediately after I found them, it was Puritanical Euphoric Misanthropia by Dimmu Borgir. And I'm like, whoa, they're playing.
Yeah. I think Puritanical is the first black metal album that really got me, but I kind of kept them off to the side. It didn't like really grab me in except for that album, but then Immortal came along, and Immortal definitely got me. Since the Northern Darkness, like, yeah. I was like, yeah, this is my shit. Okay, cool.
I totally agree.
Anthems to the Vulcan at Dusk, and the song was, oh Lord, Lost and Curse of Revenants. The girl I was dating at the time was like, hey, you should listen to this. And I downloaded that song on LimeWire.
Nice reference.
Holy shit.
Back in the dark ages.
That hard drive was fucked.
Then it was Dimmu Borgir, but it was Death Cult Armageddon.
Enthroned Darkness
first.
Yeah, it's the last really good album they made.
Well, I think that was like just came out at the time too, so that's how I came across that particular album.
Cool. If you could choose 3 bands with whom you would actually tour the world or just in the US or whatever, who would it be and why? Just name 3 bands, each of you, of course.
That's a difficult one, man.
Sorry.
Run and get a phone charger. I'll be right back. So you guys
Okay.
I think we'd tour with Oceans of Slumber. Shout out to H-Town.
They are amazing. Oceans of Slumber. Wow, the latest album is just magnificent.
They're very, very talented. Oh yeah.
The voice of the woman, what's her name?
Cammy, Cammy is fantastic.
Oh yeah, she's the mix of this soul voice with the heavy instrument behind is just this album is amazing. Yeah.
One who were like.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good third one. That one band that comes to mind that we'd love to tour with would be Enslaved. I see a lot of overlap with what we do while being a little bit different.
Agree on.
What's that?
That's the other band that all 4 of us agree on, besides Emperor.
Yeah, we do all agree on Enslaved. They are favorites of all of us.
Yeah, they seem so friendly as well, because I've seen an interview, because a guy from the UK who owns a YouTube channel as well had him on as a special guest, and the guy seems so humble, so simple and so cool. It's amazing because when you have such a past in music, so many albums and so many success, how can people can stay like that? So human. So yeah, I like him. I like them a lot as well.
And I'm sorry we're not, jumping up with answers. It's a difficult question to narrow that down. I will say there's one band that I've been really liking lately that's out of England called Luna's Call. They're really good. I don't know if people listen to them. If we ever make it out to Europe, I think they'd be someone that we would definitely be playing with out there. I think Europe is kind of where we have our eyes set, and for festivals, for playing live shows in the future. That's kind of, I think, more our market, I guess. The progressive death metal is a lot bigger with Europe in general, I think, than in America. So, yeah.
But that's cool because we have a couple of huge heavy metal festivals in Belgium. So I hope you will be there. I hope you will be there so I can see you. So.
If we get an invite, then about it.
I've got a actually who I would love to tour with if it tours ever become a thing again. The Shrine out of Iceland.
Yes. Yes.
Who's?
I
actually could pick a number one because that's at least closer to some degree of peerage. Like all the people, like, who would you like to tour with? They're all like pie in the sky fantasies. Like obviously touring with Feather and Enslaved or any of those guys would be amazing. But I was racking my brain for somebody who's at least closer to that level that we would.
Zrine would be great. Miguel, you said Zrine, the Icelandic band. It's Zhrine. They're kind of a progressive black metal with some dissonance. They're kind of like straight with melodies. I don't know how to describe them. They're very good.
Okay.
I think DG is in the band from right? Isn't DG in that band, Andrew? There's someone from one of the bigger Icelandic bands is in that band as well.
Okay.
Oh, and there's another band kind of similar to them in Iceland as well that dropped an album 2 years ago. I'm blanking on their name. But they would be great too if I ever remember their name. I'll get back to you on that one.
No problem.
Then I'm going to get going because I got to my phone.
Probably. You thinking of Samarnik?
No.
So for me, once again, Europe and all that. Borknagar, because I feel like we work pretty well. Very similar influences and all that, I would think. And I'm surprised. I mean, once again, pie in the sky, Nibelivskar. So, I mean, come on. We get compared a lot to them, and it would be cool.
That would be cool. I would say that I'm actually going to, and I didn't think of it prior to, but since Sean mentioned it, and it was better than my third place, Borknagar would be great. Arcturus would be one, I feel like, especially with our last album. And I'm going to throw one out for left field just because I really liked their music. We're nothing like them musically. But I don't know why, but I feel like we could attract some of their fans. Incantation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because
the latest album is just
it's amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And I'm a huge. Kyle Severin from Incantation was definitely one of my bigger influences. So that's I
think if we played a show with them, we just have to play for Signs from On High like 4 times in a row.
On loop. Yeah.
Well, nice one.
The
perfect heavy metal album for you.
One.
Good.
I could cheat and give you 2 very quickly because these are that always fight it out for first place. And one of them would be This Godless Endeavor by Nevermore. And it just is start to finish perfection. And after that, probably Still Life by Opeth.
Oh, yes, that's my favorite Opeth album.
Yeah, and honestly,
Still Life, yeah.
fight it out with Blackwater Park and Ghost Reveries, but if I only get one, I'm picking Still Life.
Yeah. Everybody's talking about Blackwater Park, but it's not my favorite, honestly. Still Life for me is really the top of the game, you know.
Then I guess you'll like my answer then too, because for me it would be Opeth Ghost Reveries.
Ghost Reveries, yeah.
That
is a good one too.
It used to be between Still Life and Blackwater Park and Deliverance kind of being my favorite, but then over time, Ghost Reveries just locked me in. That's my favorite
song, hands down. But I just think Still Life finish is their best. Like, you know, the songs bleed into one another and it has the best flow. Whereas there's a couple spots in Ghost Reveries it chills for a minute, but Ghost of Perdition is the best Opeth song in my opinion. It is damn near. If you want to talk about a perfect song to demonstrate everything that band was capable of when Michiel Akkerfeld was at the top of his songwriting game, the top of his screaming game. The production on that album was fantastic. Basically, yeah. And that would be the song I would pick out to be like, this is why I like this band.
Yeah.
I'm going to cheat as well and give you two because I can't decide in terms of what I find the most balanced. World Funeral by Marduk and Enthroned Darkness Triumphant by Dimmu Borgir.
It checks out. Since everyone else did too.
Is that the one with? Sorry, is that the one with the green cover?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's my favorite from Dimmu Borgir. Yeah, that's my favorite as well.
Since everyone's done too, I'll throw in an oddball that is barely metal, but it is around the same era of Michiel Akkerfeld, and that would be Aerion's The Human Equation. That album is like maybe my favorite album of all time, and it's a huge influence on, I think, why I love concept albums so much.
Yeah.
It's just getting into Aerion, and love it.
For me, and that album was a huge influence on Echoes.
Yeah, it was.
Okay. What is, on a personal point of view, your best concert moment? First, as a fan, and second, as a band performing on stage. Two memories, the best two memories as a fan in a gig and as a band in a gig. Can you share that with us?
Andrew already knows what I'm going to say as a fan, and I can already feel him stabbing me through the camera. I went when we were in school. I had traveled back where I had been living before to kind of spend the summer with a friend, and it happened to be that Nevermore and Evergrey were on tour with, because In Flames and Throwdown is like the Megadeth tour kind of thing, the Gigant tour when that was still around. But they happened to have a off night for the festival or for the big tour, and Nevermore and Evergrey booked out a small venue called Jack's in Virginia outside of DC, and it was like the best metal venue. I grew up going to lots of shows there, and Nevermore and Evergrey co-headlined a show. So they both played for an hour and a half each, whereas they had only been playing for like 30 minutes maybe on this tour because they were the openers. And it was when Chris Broderick was the second guitarist of Nevermore. So being able to be front row with like Chris Broderick and Jeff Loomis and everything, like Nevermore in their heyday, that was my favorite experience by far.
I can definitely understand that.
Yeah. And as far as playing a show goes, not really sure what stood out the most to me. We have a local.
Not the White Swan.
Nothing at the White Swan.
Oh, nothing.
I don't care if you guys look this up on YouTube. No, fuck you, White Swan. We had done a show for a brewery here in town that we're really good friends with, called Brass Brewing. It's a metal brewery here in Houston. They make really good beer, and they did a 420 concert. I guess that was back in 2019 because we've been stuck inside for over a year now. But that show was a lot of fun. It was a really good day and a really good crowd. So I think for shows, that would probably be the one that stands out to me.
Yeah, we played that show really well too. And honestly, I think the funniest part was we were the least stonery band there, and through what had to have been some mix-up, we were the ones who were on stage at 420. So I remember going like, all right, smoke them if you got them, I guess. We're willing to go.
Then we proceed to play nothing stoner. No stoner at all.
No, like nothing at all. And I'm sitting there going like, this is clearly a tactical error. Like some band up there needed to have like a giant bong and, you know, do some ceremony. We're just kind of like, what's up? Have fun.
Excellent.
Well, I would actually say that in terms of performances, that yes, the Brash 420 show was definitely highlight. As a band, we played quite well. We had a large crowd. It was well received. You know, we sold a decent amount of merch that day. So I would say that was it. For me, like the best show I attended, or my favorite show that was the most impactful for attended, would have been back when I lived in Los Angeles, California, and I got to see Emperor in 2007 when they were doing some reunion shows at the Key Club in Los Angeles.
If you deliver such good work, obviously good work pays out. So of course, honestly, I believe that it's just the beginning for you. It's obvious. If you watch the comments on people on the web, on different platforms, on different websites, they're all crazy about Echoes. They all say the first album was already a big thing when they heard it for the first time, but they say like Echoes surpasses it on all points. So I can't imagine the third one, how it's gonna sound like, but I'm just craving for it already because wow.
It'll be a blend of the two and something new.
Something new? Can you tell it more about that?
Yeah, here's the preview is it'll be a blend of the two albums we have already mixed with some new stuff. Because stylistically, some of those riffs were written back when we were doing The Heavens Are Not on Fire. So like some of them will have a similar kind of timbre and flavor to them, although they're in a different tuning now than they used to be. And yeah, it'll be like a blend of the two plus some new territory. That'll be the easiest third album.
And I'll say,
and I think we've. Go ahead, Branson.
I was going to say that there's something that we'll see if this comes to fruition or not. I'll leave a little bit of suspense out there, but something I've been pushing for is to stay true to what we're doing, but also cast our net a little bit wider as well. And so I want to do, and I know this may be somewhat blasphemous in the world of prog metal, but I want to have like a single type song, like a song that could be, you know, perhaps released early or something that where we're really staying true to our roots, but we're also
we're doing our best to humor Branson. It is kind of a unique idea in what we're doing. I mean, there's certain catchiness to a lot of, like, if you think about Opeth and Enslaved, like there's choruses there that are catchy and get stuck in your head and are repeated like twice. And so I think that's kind of how that fits in with us. Like, no, we're not going to release a 3-minute long song unless it's the outro of the album, which the format of this next album should be very similar to The Heavens Are Not on Fire, minus the poetry song titles. Doing away with that one. I'm sorry for that one.
To clarify, I was not talking about a 3-minute long song. I'm still thinking in the 7, 8, 9
so
minute
yeah,
range.
we'll still have a 7 to 10 minute long song, but there may be some elements in there that kind of harken to the Enslaved Opeth approach to catchiness and pop, if you will. I don't think we'll ever be pop, but you know. Let's say,
like, everybody knows the history of like the Deftones, where Steph Carpenter wants it to be Meshuggah and everybody else wants it to be like, you know, kind of popping, whatever. He's doing like that, but in reverse. So we'll see. And sometimes that ended up being really awesome Deftones songs. So we'll see what ends up here.
Yeah. I will say that you will hear a bit more Ahab and Nevermore influence on the next one. Okay. That's an element that was a little bit there on the previous two albums, but not so much. Ahab really wasn't that much in the riffs, maybe on the first album. So that'll be a thing. And you know, we like synthesizers now, so I think we'll still have some synth action, and it's actually a lap steel on top of it. So there's going to be the same. I don't know if you caught some of the layers on the previous album, but there's concert percussion on both of the albums that we've released so far, and there's been some synth and keyboard kind of elements mixed in. I have a violin bow that I play guitar with for the opening of Echoes. That like experimentation is something that we'll continue doing, and I think that's more so than the focus on, you know, time signatures. We like to do really long songs that blend a lot of different influences together while being able to be experimental with how the music is ultimately put together, and that's something that'll definitely continue.
Wow! If you bring some Ahab like sound, you know, these doomy, really slow elements to your music on top of the rest, man.
Yeah. I mean, we've had Funeral Doom parts on both albums so far, so you know, Funeral Doom is something that is pretty close to the heart for all of us, and it's something that stylistically can blend in. I mean, if you think about most great Funeral Doom albums, are they all like going slow the whole time? Yeah, some of them are, but like Esoteric is a band that is particularly influential, and they mess with tempo a lot, and you can mix in their case, it's more like a death doom or old school death metal influence worked in, but a lot of bands do black metal mixed in with Funeral Doom because it can be so seamless. It's a format that really lends itself to blending with other things. So it was kind of a natural thing for us to automatically like, yeah, we love Funeral Doom, and Funeral Doom's going in there.
Yeah, 100%. And I've always liked that bit where some bands can pull it off where you just go to cut time. Like you're hanging out at 60 beats per minute and you have these droning notes, and all of a sudden it's 120, and then that can sometimes double to 240 in the span of just a couple of bars. And, you know, it's frantic. It goes from, you know, just this plodding, desperate, lonely kind of feeling to, you know, just ravenous insanity. And there's definitely going to be a couple moments like that in the next record.
Okay. And so basically, I'm going to be cursing Andrew's name from the studio as I'm trying to record that.
All good.
Most likely.
All good, Brandon.
It's happened before, and it'll happen again, Brandon.
Yeah. There were some parts of the last one where it was some crazy shifts, but all in all, he was right to do it. It was difficult to record, but we made it through, and it's all good.
He's staring daggers at me I'm sitting in the control, like, it's good. We're sitting there counting out. He's like, hate you.
It's really actually truly incredible that we've been able to collaborate together so much because we're all very stubborn people.
Are you gonna do you plan to have the album Echoes released on vinyl or that's not gonna happen?
You know, you saying it puts us closer to having it on vinyl. So that's the plan. There have been a decent amount of requests, and the more requests that we get, the more likely it is to happen. The reality of the situation is that vinyl's incredibly expensive right now, and there is a lot of demand as far as you see on, you know, Facebook and music groups or on the labels page, people being like, hey, is this ever going to be issued on vinyl? And you can count those up and you'd have dozens of people. But then when you have to place the order for 150 or 300 or more vinyl, you don't really know. The label can't know how many people will actually purchase it. And Luna's Call is actually a great example for this because Luna's Call just did, thank you. Luna's Call actually just did a crowdfunding for their vinyl, and it sold out really quickly. So it's great for them that they were able to do that. And Nick from Hypnotic Dirge is incredibly supportive of us, and he's starting to work out some vinyl issues. I know that the Nun, I don't know if you're familiar with Nun, they're probably the biggest band on Hypnotic Dirge. They do DSBM, and they're really good at it. And they're like Branson's favorite band. That's most of the reason why we're on there.
If I had to pick a favorite band of the last 5 years, it would be None, hands down.
But their vinyl issues have gone really well. So I think, they obviously have a bigger fan base than we do, but there's progress in that direction, and I'm hopeful. Based on the digital sales, I would say there's definitely a possibility, but just write the label and ask that question.
Yeah.
And don't tell them that we sent you.
Yeah, personally, I would love to, on the first year anniversary of the album, release a vinyl with all the bells and whistles. Because Nick especially can attest. Like, I had like a battle plan. Because there's some cool stuff that you can do with vinyl.
We have a plan, yeah.
That, I mean, lock grooves, reverse tracks, hidden tracks, all this crazy stuff you can do with vinyl that you can't do with any other medium. Yeah. And we had like a legit plan that just didn't work out. So if it ever gets released, hopefully we can do some of that.
Yeah. Just putting the idea on the world. Imagine the middle of our album when the wormhole happens. Imagine that on a infinite loop. And if that sounds good to you, then email our label asking for vinyl.
Yeah. I would love to do it where the album played one way as you went to the center, and then in the other case it played out.
Yeah.
And it's not that difficult to do. I had quotes for it too. Like, there was a guy who was going to cut it. It's just, it came down to circumstances beyond our control. Yeah.
So there's a chance, just not right now.
I hope so, because I'm kind of a vinyl geek, Each time I listen to an album and I love it, I want to own it on vinyl. I don't know where it comes from, but I like the object actually.
Andrew
it's
gets
nice
to show off his collection.
Really? How many do you get?
Not seeing it, Andrew. It's too dark.
Yeah, I know. Turning on some lights.
Cribs, Will's edition.
Oh, I had the same. I am the same one. It's the Audio Technica, right?
Yep.
Yeah. It's the same. I get the exact same. Really appreciate it, you for your time, honestly, and I wish you all the best and Happy New Year, by the way.
Happy New Year to you as well. Thanks for having us.
You as well, sir.
And I wish you really all the best for the future, and you guys deserve it, and thank you very much for your time. Honestly, it's really nice from you, and it's been really nice for to have a chat with you. Honestly, it's amazing. I just can't believe it. Donc voilà, c'était une interview relativement longue. Vous voyez que j'étais quand même pas mal stressé. Franchement, c'est pas un exercice facile de se retrouver face à face avec quatre texans comme ça. Voilà, donc ce n'est pas ma langue maternelle évidemment. Donc pour gérer évidemment l'écoute et le dialogue avec chacun des quatre, c'était franchement pas un exercice facile, mais c'était super plaisant. Et j'espère franchement pouvoir encore avoir l'occasion de refaire ce genre de choses dans un futur plus ou moins proche. Donc voilà, donc je vous disais qu'en début de vidéo que j'étais en train de bosser sur 2 ou 3 vidéos qui arrivent dans les prochaines semaines. On va évidemment recommencer nos petites vidéos hebdomadaires, comme je le disais. C'est jusque-là, le mois de janvier est très très calme. Le mois de janvier, c'est toujours le mois le plus calme au niveau des sorties musicales, forcément. Il faut le temps que l'année démarre et se remettre en place, etc. Donc ici, il n'y aura pas évidemment de revue hebdomadaire cette semaine parce que je n'ai pas encore le contenu nécessaire pour présenter une vidéo de 20 minutes. Donc j'attends d'avoir encore quelques petites pépites. Et dès que j'ai le compte, je vise une dizaine d'albums, dès que j'ai le compte, là il doit m'en manquer 2 ou 3. Dès que j'ai le compte, à ce moment-là, je m'y attellerai et la vidéo sera évidemment publiée sur la chaîne incessamment sous peu. Donc voilà, donc j'espère que cette interview vous a plu. N'hésitez pas de mettre en commentaire vos impressions. N'hésitez pas de mettre en commentaire également ce sur quoi il faut que je travaille, ma diction ou etc. Est-ce qu'il y a des choses qui ne vont pas? J'imagine qu'il y en a. Aussi, petite parenthèse, vous avez vu dans ma vidéo précédente avec l'interview de Ross du groupe Countless Skies, j'ai fait apparaître dans ma vidéo donc mon auditeur number one, c'est le number one tout simplement parce que c'est lui qui commente le plus mes vidéos et je sais qu'il est le premier à les regarder, donc il a eu droit à un petit bonus d'apparaître dans la vidéo. Donc si vous aussi vous voulez, lors d'une prochaine interview sur la chaîne, si vous aussi vous voulez apparaître dans la vidéo pour poser une question au groupe, je ne sais pas encore qui ce sera, mais je vous donne déjà quelques petits indices ici. Je suis en pourparlers déjà avec 2 ou 3 groupes pour faire des interviews et croyez-moi, il y a du lourd. Je ne vous en dis pas plus. Mais voilà, donc si vous avez envie d'avoir ce privilège, ben, n'hésitez pas de commenter, y aller comme des fous, et vous aurez peut-être la chance d'apparaître dans une vidéo et de poser la question directement au groupe que j'interviewerai. Voilà, c'est dit. Donc en attendant, merci de vous abonner, de liker, de partager, de commenter, d'activer la petite cloche, et on se retrouve très très bientôt sur la chaîne pour de nouvelles aventures. A plus, ciao ciao.